Hello, world. So today I'm chatting with George of Kynsho Designs. And welcome, George. Say hi to the world.
How you guys doing?
So, yes, I really appreciate you coming and spending a bit of your time with, us today and just talking about self-love and what that means, especially from a man's perspective. But before we even get into that, let's just chat a minute about who you are. So tell the world a bit about yourself, who you are, and how you have become a businessman, a designer, and a stylist.
Uh, Thanks for the introduction. So my name's George. I'm the founder of Kynsho, and Kynsho, the word, because you're probably thinking, or your audience is like asking, what does that mean? It means in pursuit of personal progress in Zen Buddhism. So the literal word Kynsho, if you translate it one to one, basically means knowing your nature. And when you understand your nature, you can understand what's important to you value wise. And once you understand your nature, it's Kensho literally means an epiphany. It means an awakening of self and purpose. And once you get to that level of epiphany and awareness, then you can start to get to the point of enlightenment. So Kensho is the spark. There's another complementary word called Satori, which is the execution of it in Zen Buddhism. But Kensho is the realization of thought. And then once you get to that level of realization, you're supposed to practice every day, getting one step closer back to that initial thought. So in my journey and process was um, I used to be a brand strategist as a consultant working with companies, working to help them design new products and services, but I didn't have the tangibility of making things myself. I had to rely on the system and other people, and I really wanted to make things myself. So I started to teach myself how to design things. So I started taking lots of maker classes, woodworking, uh, metallurgy, glass blowing, anything tangible, where I can just explore without a problem or a brief and let the material take me wherever it wanted. And that culminated in me building a motorcycle, uh, a motorcycle. And that taught me like how to sew, how to weld, and how to like work with like manufacturers, not in anything akin, but it gave me the skills. And that was my epiphany, my Kensho moment where I was like, I'm basically running a company. Um, and then the skills that I applied to the bike, I applied to men's accessories, because when you ride a bike, you're really vulnerable on a bike, and you have to be really considerate about what you wear and carry. And that's when I realized, accessories today aren't really designed. One, they're not designed for the way we live and work, and two, they're not well thought out for men.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew what I wanted and what I needed, and no one was going to make it, so I took it upon myself to start.
Oh my gosh. That is, wow, that's a whole life lesson just right there. This is awesome. So I actually had been wondering because when I look at your Instagram pages, I see the motorcycle in a lot of your branding, but I didn't realize you'd actually built a motorcycle yourself, and that is so cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the inspiration, and I look at that thing every day, and it's like, how do I always get back to that jovial state of awareness and excitement of creating something from nothing? So that was that bike. If you've ever seen it, or you go on Instagram or go to my website, it doesn't look like any other bike that exists in the world, because it was in my head, and I had to find people to help me make this intangible thing a physical object. So every day, it's a reminder of what's possible.
it feels kind of like because when you were talking about the other mediums you worked with, like the glass blowing and everything, that you were just kind of looking to see where the process would take you. And that's
Correct.
kind of the opposite of how a lot of us live life, of like, oh my gosh, I want to get here and now I'm going to stress all about the process to get there instead of just enjoying the ride of getting there. Maybe.
Yeah. So that was part of the process. I knew I wanted to make things, but I never made anything before. So I had to get familiar with how to make things, and I had to get familiar with how to work with people who make things, because I knew ultimately I'm not going to be, you know, the chief engineer, designer person engineering things. Well, my strength was in my understanding nature, was in concept, bigger picture concepts and ideas, and getting other people to collaborate with me who have the core skill sets. So I had to learn how to speak the language of designer first
Yeah.
before I could make anything. Because when you go to a designer, you can't just say, "Hey, I have an idea." Like, I had to make a prototype. I had to have physical, tangible things that they could react to. And then I had to be able to say, okay, I know what's the next step in your process. How can I help you? So that just basically making it easier for people not to say no to me.
True. Yes. Yeah. So I actually love what you said and about the language part, because that kind of brings us like straight to one of the reasons why I contacted you, which is to, talk about love and self-love. So I don't know if you're familiar, there's, the concept of love languages.
Uh, Please go on.
So there's like the concept of love languages, like there's different ways people express love, right? Or receive love. It could be like acts of services or gifts or affection. There's, I think five of them. So um how, and it kind of, may even come out of our definition of love. So how do you in your language define love, and in your language, like in yourself personally, is there a difference even between love and self-love, or is it all the same thing?
They're all the same thing. They're all interrelated. Everything is related. You can always find a connection point. Uh, and I won't necessarily use the word love, but um, for me to start was it was the a purest act of being selfish.
Mm.
Uh, and I say that because when I was on a call today about time, I wanted to be in control of my time, and I wanted to be able to do things in the way I envisioned them. So I had to be really selfish about crafting and creating skills to allow me to do that, so that in as a result that I can be selfless in how I give my time, because you can't help other people if you don't understand what's important to you first.
Okay.
So a lot of my process was, I'm going to let a lot of things go in my life, and I'm just going to work and focus on understanding me,
Hmm.
and and creating and developing the skill sets that I need to be successful, to communicate and give, be mindful, listen to other people, so that I could give more of myself. And you can't do that until you fully understand yourself.
Yeah, it's like that boundaries, but that's almost like a Kynsho moment, right? Of getting to that epiphany of
Yep,
understanding that you need to take certain things for yourself before you can release to others.
correct. And that goes relationships, otherwise everything else.
Yes, too. Yeah.
Sometimes you got to people off, cut people out who aren't in service of what you're trying to achieve, and you have to reset the button.
Yep.
So you have to really prioritize how you want to spend your time. And part of my process was doing a lot of that, but I was really intentional about being selfish.
I
Really intentional.
I I don't know if I would say it's selfish though, because it's something that we need, right? Maybe the world would tell us it's selfish, but I don't know if I would say it's selfish. Getting what you need is just knowing your value.
Correct. But for me at the time, it felt like I just literally closed off the door. I was like, I'm quitting my job. I'm gonna go travel. I'm gonna go do the things that I always wanted to do. And
Mm,
I have no regard for what people say or what is the financial impact. I'm just gonna do it. And
okay. Yeah.
so I was just gone. I'm just like, this is what I'm about right now, and this is what I need. Um, and that was, and I do that a lot. So like, I'll go surfing, but I still can't swim. I'm really that kind of guy. I've done that like 5 times. But like safety nets aren't a thing that I'm like that worry me. So I'm really really intentional about things I want to do. So when I make my mind up, I'll just do it, and then I'll figure it out along the way.
It actually sounds a lot like fearlessness.
There is there's a big part about that. Yes, and, that's being an entrepreneur, but you got to be ready to be fearless.
Yeah.
Have you got to train yourself for that. You got to fail a lot, and I've done that. I've failed a lot to get me to this point where I can fail even more.
Yes. Fail bigger next time for a
Yeah,
bigger success. Yeah. I mean, I think, there's a saying on the Christian end that real love has no fear, or that if there's fear, there's no real love, right? So if we're like, I don't know how that works into Buddhism, but, if we're, you know, tied down with fear, then we're not giving ourselves what we need or able to get what we need or give what.
correct. It's the same thing. It's about in Buddhism. It's about letting go. You know, external things in the world they actually don't matter. It's when you internalize and look inwards doesn't matter. So it's the same principles,
Concept.
just different words, language again.
Yeah, language is so interesting, right? We could have a whole conversation on that just alone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So actually, this kind of goes with language too, because men and women, I feel like we speak different languages. There's been probably a million or more books in the world written on that, right? Like trying to figure out what the other side, so to speak, is saying. Um, so, and this is why it's so important for me to talk with men, because I feel like there's a lot out there for women, on self-love, and you see a lot of women talking about it, but to hear a man's voice, um it's not as common, I don't feel, at this moment, and it would be nice to change that. Do you feel that self-love looks different for a man than it does for a woman, or is it similar? Like, do you think we're more similar in what that looks like than we are different, or what are your thoughts?
Um, they're different, but they're the same. And
Mhm.
I say they're different in terms of expression. So if I'm gonna really generalize, I'd say women are more expressive in terms of voicing what they need, and men are more about taking actions.
Okay.
Um, I was thinking about this the other day. Like my father, he never said he loved me as a kid,
Oh, wow.
but he never had to because every day he showed it.
Oh,
So he never had to say it because I felt it all the all the time, and other people knew it too. So he never had to tell. I mean, he said it to me now as an adult all the time, because he's getting older. But I never really had the expectation that he had to say it because I knew it. Um, so generalizing again, I think men more of like, all right, I'm just gonna do this thing for me. I don't need to talk to anyone about it. I don't need to express it. I'm just gonna do it. A lot of the times that happens in a physical way. It might be sports, it might be going to the bar, it might be hanging out with your friends, it might be shooting pool, whatever it is. It's more of a physical connection or a bond as
mm,
an expression, but it's unspoken.
that's so interesting. Especially the part where you said the expectation, right? I mean, I think a lot of people, I hear a lot of people say things, about their mother or their father and how they raised them, because, I mean, talking about parents, since you used that example, that they expected a certain thing from their parent in terms of love and getting that affirmation for themselves. But maybe it's just because we expect it, and
Yeah,
yet it still could be given, and we might miss it if we're looking for a certain thing. And I don't know, it's an interesting concept, expectations, I think.
yeah. Expectations is one thing, but also context is another because people need different things.
Yeah.
You have to understand what people need at the right time. So that context always matters, but um, you, at the end of the day, because we're talking about parents or the context in which you grew up in,
Mhm.
that love has to come from you first. Because a lot of people, they go through therapy and all that stuff, and they make the same mistakes over and over, or they're like, why can't XYZ? Because a lot of times people don't understand their own nature,
Yeah.
and they'll make the same mistake over and over, and they'll get frustrated. Like, why won't this change? Or, they'll look at things in the past and they can't be present in the moment, or they're always looking ahead versus, seeing that what's right in front of them. And, we get caught up in not being present. We're always in a state of flux. And when you can sit down with yourself and say, this is what matters to me right now, this
Mm,
is who I am, what I'm about, then you can start to fully embrace yourself. Um,
yeah.
and then you can understand what love is. And that goes for any kind of relationship.
It's so true. And it goes back to your brand name again, Kynsho, which is like that understanding nature. I feel like it's a really powerful, powerful idea. A name, word. It's a powerful word.
Thanks. It took me a while to find it. And when I heard it and came across it, I said, oh wow, like that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for that. But I went to Southeast Asia for part of that journey, and I lived it. So it's not something that I say. It's something that I live by every day. Um, and I put the word everywhere. So when I wake up, I see it everywhere, and it's very intentional, and that's part of the process in starting it. I was like, this is what I'm working towards, and everything I'm gonna do has to be in service of this idea. So um, regardless of whatever the future looks like, that idea is always going to be with me.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important. It's really once you accept your nature and once you understand that and you're intentional about it, then that self love comes a lot easier. It doesn't have to be forced.
Yeah, and it
You
also makes
put
what I
yourself
do
into something.
purposeful. Right, and
Yeah.
everything I make is purposeful because it comes from that philosophy, which is why I was like, that I'm going to take a leap and do this, because once I had that epiphany again, then I said, I'm only person equipped with these unique set of skill sets to do this thing, which may not be applicable to other people. And I said, if I don't do this, then, you know, what am I doing? So,
What are you doing? You're not being true to yourself.
right, correct. I'm living someone else's life, which is another, the small epiphanies along the way. But I knew I didn't want to live someone else's life for the rest of my life.
Right.
So,
It's, it's your life. Also, I love it. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. So let's go to another level, which ties in with your design. What is your connection, or what connection do you see between love and beauty and fashion or design?
I do think about this a lot, actually. So I take an approach that everything I wear has to have a purpose, because
Mhm.
if you look at nature,
Yep.
even the plants behind you, everything has an intention and a purpose that works in a larger ecosystem. And
Yep.
my problem with fashion is a lot of times it doesn't.
Yeah.
So things look good for the sake of looking good, but they don't function. They don't serve a functional purpose. That their functional purpose is to look good, and like that doesn't sit well with me. So part of my design process was to be very intentional with the intent of how my product should be used
Mhm.
or should be worn. Now that evolves with people and how they interpret it, but I was clear with the intent on how I wanted it to work in service of what I needed to do. And there's, so built into the design are very practical things that help people in very subtle ways to overall in the mission, and to um, for the people to reach their full potential in the day, either being present or doing their best, or having peace of mind. It the the container of the product has that intention built into it.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking about is that sustainability, right? And a lot of fashion, especially like the cheap, fast fashion, it gets tossed out and so much gets wasted after a season, maybe
Mhm.
two, right? But if there's a purpose, it almost becomes timeless. Like you're kind of reducing that waste. Like you're being a lot more mindful and more purposeful about what you're wearing. And I mean, it's good for the environment too, right? Economics, everything when things aren't wasted because they have a
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah, that's a if you gotta understand why things are fast fashion because it makes business sense because they want you to buy more than one.
True. Yeah.
So if you look at the history, early nineteenth century, things were made well, and then they degraded intentionally because unit economics. So also skill sets. We live in a very compartmentalized industrial economy
That's true.
where you know there's a village mindset and then there's a worker mindset. In villages, people had a broad set of skills. They had to know how to do lots of things. In industrial world, we have super niche things and no one knows how to do anything
Yeah.
except for one thing. um, so and from an industrial perspective, they want you to throw things away and they want you to keep buying over because it keeps you in a box. Whereas from the way I design things, yes, it's a sustainability standpoint. I'd be tentative about using the word sustainability because it's an overused word,
Uh,
uh, but more from a practical standpoint. And
hmm.
I'm really practical. So my first epiphany with the scarf is I was like, this is a excess material. It's a waste. It's going to fray. It gets in the way. I took a scarf and I cut off the parts that I didn't need. I just cut it. I said, I don't need this. How
Yeah.
do I just make something that's as efficient as possible that serves a purpose that I can use on a day-to-day basis? So my product does, it is shorter. It takes up less material and it works better. So it's more sustainable in that sense, but it's more practical in how I need to use it. There's nothing more, there's nothing less than you need. It's just what is. It's just what you need from that standpoint. And then the materials are things that, are I consider very intentionally. They serve a purpose from how it feels on the skin to how it looks to where it comes from. Well, I wouldn't say it's a sustainability story. I think it's more of just me being intentional with how I want it to be used.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it as a confusion of like you were trying to make things sustainable. I was thinking like this mindset causes like as a result long term, you
Correct.
know, less less waste problems. But
Correct.
yeah, it's maybe not good for businesses, but it's definitely good for the consumer's wallet.
Well, I think, and to that point, I actually think that since we're using the word sustainability, since I want to speak the same language,
Well, no,
that
you can use your word. I like your word. I really like your word practical.
actually practical. I actually think that's better for consumers because when you get something that's quality, you want more of it, and
Mhm.
you want to use it in different contexts in different ways, and everything has a time and a place. So you become more loyal to things that just work. So I think that's a design thing. Dita Ramos, good design is something that you don't think about. It just does its job and it goes away. And that's ultimately a mark of a good product or whatever it is. That you don't think about it. And it's like, all right, if that goes bad, my day might be ruined if I don't have that thing. And that's how you know something becomes valuable.
That's true. Yeah. Creating value. So, what would be your tips for someone doing a photo shoot? Like, say they wanted to do a photo shoot either for their product or just for themselves for fun. What would your tips be? How do you think that styling tips, especially?
Well, before I do photo shoots, I always map out like a storyboard
Mm,
what I want to achieve,
yeah.
and so I plan it out, and then I leave room for to be ad hoc and go with the flow. but I always have a clear intention of what I want to achieve. Now, how I might get there might be different, but I usually like, okay, I want, I want to convey this aspect, this mood, this tone, visually or whatever else. Or, I might look at a model and say, there's something about that person's physique or the way they carry themselves or their personal aesthetic that I want to capture that's unique to them. And then I'll give it room to allow that person to be themselves. Cause I make accessories, everything I make, it's dependent on the other person. It's how you wear it, how it conforms to you. So I always make a plan, and then I always leave room for play.
Awesome. I love it. It's simple and practical. Have an
Simple.
intention, know what you're doing, but yet still kind of like what you were even saying at the beginning, like kind of letting it evolve and seeing where it goes so that person who's wearing your design doesn't get swallowed up by the design. There's still fun for them.
Yeah, I mean, and that part of that preparing for it means, having the right types of lenses, understanding the lighting that you want, making sure you have the location set if it's not a studio, and like being prepared to capture whatever goodness might come out of it. And then, planning for the edit afterwards, making sure you have, all the equipment, depending on the setting. Because a lot of times I'll shoot things outdoors because it makes more sense for when
Yeah.
I'm doing things in context. And then, if you're more playful, you need more brighter lights, more vivid stuff, and then your filters, how you edit it. So I have, even with my photos, my main ones, uh, I have a photo style that we created just for me. So if like at a glance, you can my good photos, stuff I don't take ad hoc, you can tell, like you can say that is a distinct look and feel that's unique
Yeah.
to the non-verbal story that I'm telling. So even if you didn't know who I was or what I made, you can say there's something unique about that photo.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've noticed that on your pages. So
Thanks.
yeah, I mean, you can see it. It's pretty clear. Yeah, there's like a color palette, tone, and everything. It seems. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. So, before we end, how can the world get in touch with you?
You can always go to the website. It's kynsho.com, Kynsho, kynsho.com. Or you can find me on Instagram. You can send me a DM. Same thing at Kynsho, kynsho. Shoot me a note, and I'm always happy to answer questions. You can do the same through the website, through the chat, um, and I respond to everything. So I have people who work with me, but more than likely, I'll probably get back to you.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like we met at Decal Market last year, and you've always been like really open and easy to send a message to, like for
Yeah,
this. Yeah, so thank you for that. It's awesome.
absolutely.
Is there any last tips or insights or practical words you want to leave with us?
Just put the pressure. I mean, always stay in pursuit. The thing is, we as people, what makes us people is what we wear and carry.
Mm,
So we always be intentional with what you choose to wear and carry. And our role, my personal belief, our role in life is to evolve. So
mhm.
don't be the same as yesterday as you will be today, because tomorrow will be different. So always keep evolving.
Yes, evolution, fearless evolution. Yes. All right, so much. Thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Likewise.